Good afternoon, everyone. We want to welcome Senator Churck Grassley here to Oskaloosa on this warm, humid day. Give us an update. So thank you for coming.
Thank you. And thanks to the chamber, whatever you call yourself, for this. The last time we did this at your invitation was 2017. And I've been in Oskaloosa 2018, 2019, well, maybe not Oskaloosa, but this county, someplace in this county, each of the last 5 years since then. So I hope nobody thinks that the last time I was here in this county was 2017, but it was the last time you hosted me. Now, this is not a speech environment. This is an environment where you're going to set the agenda, and I'm going to try to answer your questions. And before you ask your first question, I'm going to just say what I normally would do if I was at the courthouse or wherever, library, wherever I might be in this county. This is the best way to meet with your constituents because you can see me and I can see you. And but if this is the only way that I talk to 3 million constituents, I wouldn't talk to very many constituents because in the course of a year, even going to every county, you don't touch only a small percentage of people face to face. So that gives me an opportunity to encourage you to email me. That's where we get most of our communication, but also postal mail. A lot of people call in their opinions or their questions. And we, if you leave your name and address, we respond on paper to you because the essence of representative government is, of course, two-way communication. If you're going to represent people, you got to know what's on their minds. And so that's, I get to encourage that besides answering your questions being here. At the end of this meeting, we save 15 minutes if the press wants some time with me and you want to stay around and see what a mini news conference is, you're welcome to do that. A couple other things I usually try to say is, first of all, you don't have to worry about asking an inappropriate question because in the years I've been in the Senate, I haven't had such a thing. So yeah, whatever is on your mind, even if it's about me personally, you ought to ask it. Then, if any of you want to get on the weeds on some of the things that I do in Washington, all my speeches and press releases are on grassley.senate.gov. You can follow me on Twitter at Churck Grassley. You can follow me on Instagram at Senator Churck Grassley. My staff does Facebook, but we get some communication from constituents on Facebook. So however you want to join into this business of representative government when you can't see me face to face, that's how you do it. So who wants to be first? Now you folks over here, I can see you, but when I'm looking out the glass, you don't look very, it's hard to identify you. So you got your hand up.
No, it's here to see the glass.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
No, I got a question.
Please start out. It's always easier for other people when somebody gets started.
Sure. I run a small business in a company. Employ 15 people. Supply chain is absolutely destroyed. I don't know if anything Congress or Senate is looking at, but I mean, ocean freight liners are backing up at the ports left and right. I can't get product in and continue servicing my customers. I've got product. Rail service is no longer sending containers from LA to Central America. I mean, you can't get it into Chicago because the rail services are shut down. And I'm not certain how or why this is happening. You can blame COVID all you want, I guess, but the supply chain is broken. We're seeing a 350% increase on the freight on containers for product. And I just don't know if this seems like massive price gouging, and it's all going straight to the inflation problem because as I get 350 50% increases in the trade item. To date, I have not passed that on to my customers, but at some point I'm going to have to.
Price gouging is illegal, but the only way that it's going to be enforced is if the Attorney General enforces it. We write the laws. There's, in fact, it isn't just in the United States. For instance, in Asia, because of COVID, there's a whole port shut down. A lot of that stuff probably would be coming to the United States. We've taken some action that would help, but it's not going to help with the immediate problem. One of them would be the infrastructure bill we just passed. Some of the money in that is for expanding ports so we can handle these big ships faster than we have. But you might say, how many years does it take to get a port up so it's running? The other thing is the shortage of computer chips and the shortage of the stuff that deals with the health care and the health workers of the COVID pandemic. There's legislation that passed the Senate. How it'll do in the House of Representatives, I don't know. But it's to take care of some of these supply problems. But again, that's not, the supply problems you're having now will probably be over before that bill has any impact. But a great lesson was learned of being too reliant upon China for a lot of the things that we're involved in. We want to, and it's a congressional policy through this legislation, to be less reliant upon China. See? Yeah. If you,
I understand that. How about rail service? Yeah, domestic rail service.
Yeah.
Can't deliver product right now. That's domestic rail service that can't deliver product.
Is it because they can't? In other words, they can't.
Ports go back up. They can't get product out.
Is it a labor problem? That's
I
your.
wish I do. I don't
Okay.
have that answer. That's why I'm asking.
But
something that.
your question is about domestic product being shipped in the United States. You're talking about imported product being shipped in the United States.
Well, it's imported until it comes to the United States. Once it gets to the United States, it can't even get moved on the rail service in the United States. The way the freight companies work, the shipping companies, you have to have your rail service booked before your shipment, before the ship will accept the order. That's the way it works. They won't put a container on a ship until there's rail service booked to deliver it to its destination. And the rail service right now won't book that destination. So you're SOL.
Since the railroads are financed entirely by private investment, there's nothing Congress can do if they got a physical problem doing it. If they have a problem of regulation, like we have legislation in that would solve what we call the captive shippers problem, where you as a person that's a customer to either buy or sell are dependent upon just one, and you aren't getting the service you ought to have. That legislation was taking care of it, but not in any other instance. Next. I'm looking over here, so if there's somebody over here, yell at me. Okay, next question.
Right here. Okay, you brought up the infrastructure.
Yeah, go ahead.
You voted for. In layman's terms, why is this $1 trillion good for Iowa when we're paying $5 a pound for hamburger and inflation continues to rise?
Okay. Inflation is very much a concern of Congress, but in regard to the infrastructure bill, no, because it's spread out over 8 years of expenditure. It's not something that's going to be spent this year and then we're going to come back next year for the same amount of money and next year for the same amount of money. That's the infrastructure bill. Now, when you talk about inflation, That would be my opposition to the next bill that the president wants passed, that I think it's questionable, can he get passed? If they pass it, it'll be on a strictly party line vote. I'm going to vote against it because that money, $3.5 trillion, is going to be spent every year as far as you can see into the future. And that would be the kind of expenditure that a former Democratic Secretary of Treasury, Larry Summers, said in January and again in May, if you're feeding the fires of inflation, because we've already got inflation. He said that back in January in the recent statistics. So then that's why you have my opposition to the additional 3.5 trillion, and some people say 4.2 trillion in reality. And those bills are separated now. The president originally wanted those two bills put together. So then let's get back to your first question. Your first question was the bill for Iowa, what it does for Iowa. Well, Iowa, just one example, but I can give you more than one example. It would have money in it for Iowa being 50th out of the 50 states with the number of our bridges that are structurally deficient. About 23% of the bridges in Iowa would be somewhat dangerous, I guess would be another way of saying it. And that's just one example, but it would have money in for more spending on the highways. It would have money for airports, improve the 80-year-old locks and dams on the Mississippi River, where a lot of our commerce goes up and down the river, and things of that nature for Iowa. I can give you, do you have a chart I can give her?
Yeah, I do.
No, why don't you just show her the chart?
Okay. It also has broadband money.
Oh,
and do you want to talk
yeah,
about the reauthorization, how some of it's from the reauthorization of the highway bill?
Yeah, okay. Also, half of the bill that you call the infrastructure bill would have been appropriated on an annual basis anyway to what we call the highway bill. There's always an annual appropriation for highways. So half of that money would be appropriated anyway. And then, but the additional money is money that is new and would be spent for the same reasons and maybe more reasons. Like for instance, locks and dams as an example, wouldn't be in the normal bills coming to Iowa. So then, yeah, I guess that covers what you just told me to mention, right? Yeah. Okay. Next question, or a follow-up, even if you got a follow-up.
Well, you know, my biggest concern is we've got to quit printing all this money. I mean, it's got to be paid back, and I don't want it to be on my children and grandchildren's back for the rest of their lives.
Then I'll commenting on that, and then I'll go on to somebody else. Again, I'm repeating a little bit, but I do it because he's a Harvard professor. He was a Democrat Secretary of Treasury. He's the one that was telling all congressmen, not just Republicans, but all congressmen, that you've already spent too much money, you shouldn't be spending any more. And that's why you get the opposition to the $3.5 trillion that will be spent every year into the future. But part of it, very much, Congress has a great deal of responsibility through fiscal policy, not to feed the fires of inflation. But you also got to remember that some of it is outside of Congress's jurisdiction through what the Federal Reserve does. And the Federal Reserve has a loose monetary policy. Now, I think this fall, they're going to change it much faster than they originally intended at the beginning of the year. They thought there wouldn't be any changes in these policies until 2023. But they're buying up $120 billion a month of debt in this country. Some of it national debt, and some of it, about 40 billion of it would be household mortgages. And they buy it up, and that also has something to do. In other words, a loose monetary policy has something to do with inflation as much as a fiscal policy of the Congress of the United States. Okay, next question.
Chuck, can you explain when you say they're buying it down? I don't understand how that works.
How the Fed does it?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, this is something that the Fed has never done until now because of the pandemic. I suppose it's the actions that the government took in March of 2020, which we wouldn't do the same thing now, because I think you learn a lot, but there was a lot of panic in March of 2020 when the economy shut down. You didn't know anything about the virus. There's still things we maybe don't know about it, but we know a lot more than we did before. So the economy came to a halt. 22 million people unemployed. Fight the virus, and then the stock market goes way down. So immediately we passed some legislation and appropriations to hopefully build a confident economy, help the people that the government made unemployed, and then put the money forward to get the pharmaceuticals working together to get the virus or the vaccine. So then, to answer your question, immediately after we did that, then the Fed decided that, and they're independent of the Congress and the President, they decided that they needed to help this economy along like the economy did, or like the Congress did through our appropriations. And they did it by buying up, part of it was home mortgages, and the other part was assuming part of the national debt. In other words, another way.
Where do they get their money to spend?
Okay. In another way, instead of you buying a government bond to finance the national debt, or China doing it, or Japan doing it, and you doing it, the Fed started doing some of that.
Okay, so it's debt for debt, though.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The next question. I've been in construction 47 years, and we had something that always worked, and it's another thing that works you broke. Unemployment insurance was for one reason. Construction, it used to be seasonal. It's not so much seasonal anymore. But if you have to let your people off, they have something to live on until you get more work. And now, the government's paying them to stay home. It was never, if you turned down going back to work, you lost your unemployment the day you turned it down. It's just, it's simple.
Well, I can answer your question where the federal government come in, and this is all going to end on September the 6th, but in 30 states, it ended in sometime in June when Governor Reynolds and other states decided to cut out the $300 of federal money that was going in addition. But there's still 20 states that have it, and they're having the same problem you're describing that you have because of this. They're paying people more not to work than to work, and what do you think people will do? They are. Yeah. Now when it comes to the federal dollars, that's going to end September the 6th. It's already ended in Iowa. I don't expect it to be renewed at the federal level. If they do, it won't get my vote. But I don't think that I would think that with the need of the economy for workers, they'd be embarrassed to even think about renewing it, see. But what the 50 states do with their unemployment problem would be something I can't do anything about, because that's done under state law.
But at a federal level, it would seem a good idea to have, I don't think legislation fix so much. Make that so it can never happen again.
Yeah.
It wasn't broke and it worked.
And this is the first time that we've had a federal supplement to state unemployment. So I wouldn't expect it to happen again. In fact, let me repeat what I said. There's some lessons that was learned from the March 2020 shutting down the government that we wouldn't do again, and that's one of them. Yeah.
Can I ask what the rest of the lessons are?
Yeah. I think deciding everything in Washington because it was a Washington decision to shut everything down. And I think that, and particularly some of the responses of mask or no mask, vaccine or no vaccine, I think there's a feeling that a lot of that's left to the states better than to the private sector than to the federal government. Okay.
There's a person all the way against the window.
Yeah, like I said, I couldn't see you. So,
I don't want to sound rude when I ask this question, but I don't know how to ask it.
can you come over here, please? And then I'll give you the microphone.
Why are not all the politicians in Washington right now trying to fix the mess that Biden has caused with that mess?
Okay. The question is, why aren't all of us who are senators and congressmen in Washington, D.C. to fix the mess that we're in now with Afghanistan? Is that right? Yeah. Well, I gotta also walk around a little bit. Thank you. If the president called us back today, I'd go tomorrow. If leader of the United States Senate Schumer called us back, I'd go tomorrow. If I went back now, I might be the only senator there, or there could be a handful. The other thing is, except for money, what could we do? It's all the president's commander-in-chief under the
So
Constitution.
there's nothing our senators can do to override Biden and what he's doing.
No, not as far as the constitutional responsibility of being commander-in-chief.
If he keeps going the way he is, we're not going to have a country by the end of this year. Look what he's done in the last 7 months.
Yeah.
Look at our border.
Sure. Well,
You know, we've got a lot going on in this country, and I just feel like
yeah.
everybody talks, but nothing gets done.
Well, I feel that way an awful lot too, and I'm there in Washington. In other words, we can pass legislation, we can appropriate money, but the president under the Constitution executes all that stuff. So when you bring up the border, then I say the responsibility, we could pass legislation like money for building the wall, but he isn't going to build the wall. Besides, in this Congress, you wouldn't get the money to spend on the wall. But I'd vote for it, and I did vote for it, and we got 300 more miles of fence that really works. Or I could also say that there's enough laws on the books, but he's not enforcing them. Now there is some check on what he's doing, because in regard to the border, there's already been 2 or 3 court decisions saying what he has changed on January the 20th, he didn't have the authority to change. Or in regard to the eviction of renters because of COVID and people not working, 2 courts have said that he hasn't had the authority to do that. So there is some check on this president.
If you and I did that stuff, didn't follow court orders, wouldn't we be in jail? Why can't they do something with him? Is he an F? Can't you guys say that he's not doing his job? He's not taking care of the American people?
I think that that's something that you find, all you got to do is watch television at night, and you find members of Senate saying that he's not doing this or that, or read my tweets, and you'd find the same thing.
But there's nothing we can do.
Well,
Can't you guys impeach him? 25th Amendment?
well, I'm a juror if they do impeaching, but I'm not a member of the House of Representatives. And would you expect Pelosi running the House of Representatives with the majority that they would impeach a Democrat president? He could be impeached, yes. Do you think that they would do it? I don't think they would do it.
Republicans can't override Pelosi?
No. They'll get a chance to vote on it when it comes up, but that's the only thing. Pelosi is going to decide when it comes up. And we can't do anything as a trial, as a juror. 100 senators become a jury. We can't do anything until we get articles of impeachment from the House of Representatives.
So the American people would just sit back till with 3 more years?
No.
What happened to this country within 3 years?
You should keep doing what you're doing right now. Only get on the radio as a talk show participant, write letters to the editor, see your members of Congress, like you're talking to me, talk more.
I did go to you several times.
Okay.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
You probably answered this before, but I wasn't maybe paying attention. Can you tell me why you and the other 18 Republicans voted for that infrastructure?
Yeah. Yes, I did. I answered something about the infrastructure bill with this lady right here, but I didn't answer your question. So let me answer your question. First of all, I heard during the Trump administration when he wanted to spend $2 trillion on infrastructure, that how come you can't get that infrastructure bill passed? I can't give you a reason why when we had a Republican House and Senate, we didn't pass Trump's infrastructure bill. It may have been because it takes 60 votes to get a bill through the United States Senate, and maybe we didn't have any Democrat support. That's the only possible answer, and I'm not sure that that's the correct answer, but that's the only one I can think of going back looking at 4 years of history, or I mean 4 years under Trump. So then this president comes in and he wants an infrastructure bill. So after 4 years of my town meetings, people telling me we need more, we need our bridges fixed, we need our highways fixed, and it didn't get done. And then this is probably the 92nd or 91st county meeting I've had this year. I'll bet you in 80 of them I've heard about the need for infrastructure. So this infrastructure bill, like I pointed out to this lady right here, what it does for Iowa, I had a chance to vote for it. I felt I should vote for it. Now there was another reason that's more of a political reason, and it's not a Republican or Democrat reason, but it's a reason that if you want the United States Senate to be a deliberative body like it is, you would probably have been hearing since January that a lot of the most liberal Democrats in the United States Senate said we ought to do away with the 60-vote requirement, which would mean that the Senate would be just like the House of Representatives. There wouldn't be a deliberative body. The reason that hasn't happened is because there's 2 Democrat senators, Manchin and Sinema, that said they don't want to do that. So they pleaded with us to do a partisan bill, or I mean a bipartisan bill, so that they can tell the other Democrats, you know, we can work in a bipartisan way. And if you can work in a bipartisan way, you don't need to do away with the 60-vote requirement. In addition to that, it hasn't come up yet in this town meeting, but in most of my county meetings, one of the questions I always get is, how come you people can't work together? This was an opportunity to work together to get something done. And I think that's what people expect us to do. So I had a chance to vote for what I've been hearing from Iowans about roads, bridges, broadband, locks and dams and all that stuff. And that's why I voted the way I did. Okay, next question.
Yeah.
Yes.
2 questions. One, the death tax changed in some of the Democrat officers are talking about changing drastically. Does that have any chance? And number 2, as a farmer, you'll understand, like I do, anhydrous is almost double the price it was last fall. If you pay today, it will be higher if you pay next week. Is that gouging, and is there anything that Congress can do about that?
Well, like I said previously to this gentleman over here, there's already laws against price gouging, and it's a matter of enforcement. I'll be glad to bring that to the Attorney General's opinion. I haven't talked to my son yet about the price of anhydrous for this fall, but I'm sure if I heard it from you, I will soon hear it from him.
One of the local businesses in the high 700s right now.
Okay. Now, I'm going to answer your first question with 2 if answers. because there's two different ways to answer your question. One, if it's what we call regular order, which takes a 60 vote requirement, it will never get done, doing away with stepped up basis. Only used twice in the last 5 years, but there's a process that taxes can work into, but very limited number of stuff can work into it. It's a process that we call in Washington reconciliation. If that's done and all 50 Democrats stuck together, they could do it then. But I can't believe that, in fact, I know that Democrats, senators are hearing the same thing I am from people like you, that it's going to ruin the small businesses, to pass on the small businesses or the family farm. And so I don't think that they can get 50 to stick together on that subject. Okay. Next question. Yes. Could I ask you to come close too, please? I suppose it sounds like I'm lazy. I could get up and come to you.
I guess I just wanted to ask a question that's on a lot of our minds. How can we be free? We have had so many rights taken away from us. And I think of this situation with the COVID vaccine. You know, there's a lot of different ideas out there about the COVID vaccine, and they're trying to force it on everyone. And I think I hear from the other side, my body, my choice. I want to say to them, until you vaccinate everyone that comes across the border, don't talk to me about it. And there's just so many issues with that. And they want to go by their science, and their science isn't right. And if it was so right, they'd all, at Nancy Pelosi's party this weekend, would have had masks on their face. And we are tired of the hypocrisy that we're facing in this country. What's good for them is, you know, we're like low-life peons to them. And of course, we're probably the deplorables, I guess, for those of us that voted for Donald Trump. And I'm okay with that. I just don't understand. People are losing their jobs left and right. My niece is a nurse, a single mom. She has to have the vaccine. She has one child. She might want to get married again someday. And they say that a lot of times that vaccine would cause you to not be able to have children. Everybody knows this. You know, everybody knows the facts, but it's still being forced on people left and right. Where's our freedom? This is the United States of America, and we deserve to be heard. And I watch way too much news, and I'm very frustrated. And you know, it's just not right. And so, what is the Republican Party going to do to reinstate some of our freedoms? You know, these people are losing their jobs. If you get the vaccine and you listen to some science, you know, there is a lot of serious consequences to the vaccine because it's not proven. I don't care if the FDA approved it yesterday. I'm not surprised because they want everybody to take it, and it's just a way to control Americans. And what's next from them? I don't trust them for anything. You know, I appreciate what you did during the Kavanaugh hearing. I watched every day, every minute, the abuse you took from those people on the other side of the aisle. And they want to pretend that they're compassionate and kind and understanding. They're not fooling us. And so I don't even know what my question is because I have 1,000 of them running through my mind, but I just want to know, how are we going to continue to be free when they force us to do things that we have a right not to? Why do we have HIPAA? You know, if we have HIPAA, why should I tell somebody whether I got the vaccine or not? My son's going to lose his job. You know, there's a lot of people going to lose their job. And then how are they going to support their family? You know, it's just so frustrating. And that's just a little segment of what I have to say. But I do want to appreciate you for coming and facing the music, because I can't imagine during some of those hearings, the Kavanaugh and all the joke that we faced in the last year, I appreciate that you've been there, and I've been supportive of you until you voted for this last one.
Okay, I think that you didn't ask a question, but I ought to comment a little bit on what she said, and maybe it won't cover everything she said. But number one, if it gives you any satisfaction, I won't vote to mandate vaccines for everybody in this country or anybody in this country.
We need to stop the companies from mandating
Well,
them, or the universities or whatever. They're afraid to lose money, but the rest of us are afraid to lose our freedom.
Then for reasons that you and I probably hold a mutual opinion on, that the government's telling businesses too much when they can do or not do. So maybe that would make, at least this is the way I would think, is that we got so many different businesses. Can I make a blanket decision that a business can or can't tell their employees what to do, you know, along that line? But that's, you may feel differently about that, but that's one of those things that most people like your opinion and my opinion, less government interference in a business, the better off you are. On the other hand, I'm not afraid to tell people that I've been vaccinated, and I think, but it's going to be a personal choice. I didn't have to be, but I have been. Okay, next question. You can have another question.
Okay, I'm really concerned. Are you on the judicial? Okay. What I'm concerned about, why is the system so one-sided? I understand a Proud Boy received 5 months in jail for burning a BLM flag. But people can burn the American flag with no consequences. Now, I'm not for the Proud Boys, nor am I for the BLM, but I am a proud American. What's good for one should be good for all. And what can we do about that?
Well, there's been I'm not one of them, but there's been members of Congress that have gone to either where these folks are, well, first of all, out of 550 people that have been arrested for what happened on January 6th, I don't know the number, but don't get the idea that 555 are in jail waiting trial. But some of them are. And some congressmen to raise the visibility for it, and I'm not afraid to talk about it, but I haven't said probably as much about it as I should have. But they actually went to see these folks or to talk to the people that are in prison, and they didn't get a meeting. So that seems to me to be wrong, because why people are in prison, you ought to at least know why they are in prison without a trial or being held for a trial. Why do they have to be held the way they are? Now, there may be a different reason for every one of them, why some of them might be held or not held in a certain way waiting trial. But there has been this done for some of the individuals. It's gone as high as the Circuit Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. Their lawyers have gone that high to get them out, I suppose get them out on bond. And I haven't read those court cases, but the judges said there's a reason, a legitimate constitutional reason for holding them. Now, that's not a politician saying that, that's a judge saying that. See? And that's as far as I can go and answering your question. I don't have any more information. Okay, is there enough? Yes.
Yes, I'd like to ask, why are we bringing all these Afghanistan people here? We've got, Americans over there, and isn't there a danger that they throw out coffee, heroin, or that will end up here in our state?
Yeah. On the last part of your question, the heroin could end up in the United States regardless of what's going on with the evacuation of people. If I'm going to tell you what I think is the situation, and if you've heard different, you need to tell me. I think Americans have the highest priority of getting Americans out there first, and then the SIVs next. But there might be some of them coming out if they're in the compound or if they're in the airport. I suppose there's a decision made by somebody that they ought to be able to get out. Maybe it's because they got through. Today, the Taliban announced, I've been told by another radio person in another city, that the Taliban said that no Afghan is ever going to get out, which would put our president in a situation where isn't he, since these people helped our military effort, and they're probably going to be executed if we leave them there, would we have a moral obligation to take them out? And I think a lot of people in this country feel that way, and I think it's a legitimate feeling. Then would he, what sort of an example would that set in the future if you want people to help our military when they need help from nationals wherever we are? So would the president keep that obligation, or wouldn't he? I think he's going to look bad if he doesn't keep it. Okay.
Can't we make the Americans priority? Give them first.
Well, I think that Americans have priority to get out first. Yes.
How many Americans have we brought back?
Well, I can only give you the figure for the number that got out yesterday. I don't remember every day the numbers, but about 16,000.
She may be interested in your letter that you joined with Inhofe demanding that President Biden prioritize getting Americans out first.
Yeah, you may have heard this on TV too, that 15 of us, under Senator Inhofe of Oklahoma's leadership, sent a letter to the president putting emphasis upon getting Americans out first and get them all out. If he's made a real big mistake by setting August 31st as a deadline that he's going to get all the troops out. If you'd got all the Americans out, are you going to leave the Americans there just because you said you're going to get your troops out? Are we going to let the Taliban dictate to us what we're going to do with our military and what we're going to do to protect Americans? And essentially, that's the way it's turned out if he doesn't change his mind. Now, hopefully he gets them all out by August 31st. But if he doesn't get them all out by August 31st, you're going to leave them there to die? I don't think that's right. And that's what our letter is implying.
Why were there only 15 of you that sent that letter? Why wouldn't all, especially Republicans, send the letter?
Well, this way. Well, I can't answer for why Democrats didn't sign it. But let's say there's a real urgency to get that letter out Saturday. And you want to get it out that day for some reason or other. And I wasn't the originator of the letter, but they called the office. Maybe they called more than 15 offices. Maybe they called all 50 Republican offices. Maybe they called some Democrat offices. I don't know. But at the end of the day, if the letter's got to go, you go with what you got. Okay, next question.
I have another one.
Yeah.
I would like you to ask President Biden this. How he can justify sending 25,000 troops to Washington in January, and now he can't send that amount to Afghanistan.
Well, he could send that amount to Afghanistan.
I'd like to
Yeah.
ask him that.
Well, he isn't going to do it. Well, I mean, I can ask him the question you want me to, but I'd speculate he's going to say for 5 or 6 years under 2 or 3 different presidents, we said we were going to get out of there. And he's decided we're going to get out now. The trouble is he decided the wrong way to get out now. He should not have sent a date when he's going to get out, because that tells the enemies that all we got to do is wait. And that's what they did. That was the biggest mistake made. Yes.
You just told us earlier that as a senator, there's nothing you can do about it.
Is the military overriding on this?
No, not not with civilian control of the military. That's a principle of our Constitution. What's your question, sir?
Well, you told her earlier that you couldn't do anything about what was going on with the president. You didn't have any real authority or power as a senator.
Yeah.
So I'm assuming that
Well,
the same way here, if on August 31st we're leaving citizens behind, you said we shouldn't do that, we can't do that, we gotta, what's the Senate gonna do about it when that happens?
Well, the Senate, in other words, if your question is, can the Senate say you can't bring him out? He's commander-in-chief, he can bring him out.
So you can be angry about it, but
Yeah.
you have no control.
No, we have control over the amount of money that goes to the military. We got control over the declaration of war. We can bring generals and other people and defense secretaries to Congress to ask them questions.
Do that?
Yes, in fact, 2 committees, I think, and maybe it's both the House and Senate, but at least in the Senate, 2 committees are going to have hearings, and we don't go back until after Labor Day. But it may even occur before then, but the Intelligence Committee is going to have hearings, and the Armed Services Committee is going to have hearings. And both of those are controlled by Democrats. Republicans can't call a committee hearing. So it means that at least some Democrats feel that this thing has gone wrong.
Why is it, I think that's the frustration that a lot of us feel, why is it that under the previous administration, everything could get stopped, whether the party was in power, whether the Republican Party was in power or out of power during the first 2 terms of the previous administration, or the secession, the following 2 terms. All progress was met with resistance all the time by the opposition party, and I call them the opposition party. But it seems like whenever the Democrats are in charge, we don't have a bunch of court cases getting jammed up trying to stop everything. Everything just seems to, we can't do anything except let it happen because we're not the party in charge. Yet when the shoe's on the other foot, when we are the party in power, nothing happens. We sit here in the 90s and we watch Newt Gingrich come in with a whole new group of Republicans. Did they enact our Republican stuff when they had power? Very little. Very little. And then because of that, we ended up with Clinton. After 2 years of Clinton, we did what we'll do this time around. We'll throw a whole new bunch of Republicans in there to stop the bleeding. Next time, we need to stop the bleeding. Gotta hold the line. We can't be given an inch. Give it an inch. Give it an inch. Bipartisan, bipartisan, bipartisan. And we're going to play fair because the other half doesn't play fair. That's my point.
Yeah, you are right, brother.
So that's
Well,
that's the frustration that you're hearing. How to move that line.
you know, imagine if you're out here and have that frustration. For those of us that are inside, have greater frustration when we can't get things done that we want to get done. The only explanation, the only constitutional explanation I can give you is a 60 vote requirement in the United States Senate. So if you want to get something done, you got to have some bipartisan cooperation to get it done. But remember, that's working now because these questions that we have about the $3.5 trillion or $4 2/10 trillion, they can't get that done through the 60 vote requirement, so they're trying to use reconciliation. They've got to keep all 50 Democrats together, and they may not keep Manchin. Well, they could, yes. Then I'd have to say that I'm disappointed in Manchin and Sinema.
Yeah, well.
But right now, I feel pretty good about it right now.
So, Senator, you're saying is you went along with the whatever the $1 trillion infrastructure bill was, on bipartisan basis because you thought that being bipartisan, Senator Manchin on your side, and now you're not convinced that they're going to be on your side. In fact, this may come over under reconciliation and you're constructed $3.5 trillion in addition. So you cooperate and they play hardball.
All I can tell you is that in private conversations that we had, they said that if we if we can't show bipartisanship on something that's as well received and well needed as infrastructure is, then how can we resist the pressure we have in other directions? Now, I'm taking their word on that, and I'm not the only one taking their word on it. I'd be a later one taking their word on it, but the 5 Republicans working with the 5 Democrats to work on this infrastructure deal, it was pretty central to their getting a product. That's all I can just tell you. Tomorrow, a month from now, you can say, Grassley, see how wrong you were, or 2 months from now, you could say that. And all I can go by is what I know now. But if you want to know is that the basis of my voting for it? No. The basis of my voting for it was this, that for 4 years, Trump wanted the $2 trillion infrastructure bill. I think most Republicans thought that was too much. Democrats probably didn't want to pass it because they didn't want to give him a victory. So then, throughout this year, hearing the same thing from my constituents of what we need for our bridges fixing, what we need for our highways to get fixed, what we need to fix the 80-year-old locks and dams on the Mississippi River, and the fact that infrastructure is investment. It's not expenditure, because you invest it like a highway for 40 years before you tear it up and lay it down again. It's something that governments have always done, even going way back to the 1820s, building canals in this country, as an example. It's purely a constitutional responsibility of Congress to do or not to do. And we haven't done a very good job of it, but I think this fills in some of the lacks that we've had in that area. Well, it could be a lot of trust that you put even in some conversations you have with Republicans. Is that. On the other hand, I guess I personally feel if you're doing what right, you eventually win out. Not always, but eventually you do. Okay, next question. Okay. Yes. Could you?
Before you go, so if there's other questions, I just want to say something. This might be one they don't want to hear. Well, this really isn't a question, except earlier I said that I wanted to be free. And I just want you to know that I am free because I'm free in Christ Jesus. And that is the only hope for America right now. So, if you want to truly be free, you need to bow your knee to the Lord Jesus Christ. Because as much as we could be frustrated about what our government does or doesn't do, He's still on the throne and He's still in control. And this is a battle. And also, I have to remind myself this on a daily basis, that our battle is not against flesh and blood. It is against the principalities. And sometimes I get so angry at the news that I scream and I think of all these things that I'd like to happen to these people. And then I'm ashamed because our battle is not against flesh and blood. So I ask the Lord to forgive me for that. And He's fighting the battle for us. And you know, really the honest truth is that as an American person, we do not deserve God's mercy. We have gone against Him at every turn, and we don't deserve His mercy. But I still ask for it, that He would give us, extend mercy to America. Because there is a lot of good here, but we're all sinners of the worst kind. And if you want hope for America, that's where you need to turn. Open your Bibles and read it. Thank you.
I hope that I hope you'll read 1 Timothy 2:1 and 2 and pray for us in government.
And then we'll have to end after this.
You know, I am also a Christian, but I will tell you this. even Jesus went into the temple and overturned the tables of the money changers. He got angry when things were not right. And you know what? As a people, American people, we are going to have to step. You know, Senator Grassley, I write you all the time. I call your office all the time. Joni Brewer, you probably have heard from your workers that I call all the time with things that bother me. But unless we as an American people stand up and turn the tables over as Jesus did in righteous anger, we're not going to get anywhere. But I'll tell you this, we as a Republican Party need to stand together and stand strong. A lot of our senators are, not you, Senator Grassley, but a lot of our senators are wishy-washy guys. And if it sounds good over here, I'll go over here and vote with these people. Well, you know what? We need to make some changes when 2022 comes around. So I hope that we're all prayed up, where our minds are clear, and we know what choices we want to make. Because the change is going to come if we're willing to change the government. Thank you for coming today.
Thank you all for coming. My staff says we have to quit, but we save a little bit of time here for the news media, so if you want to sit in and listen to what we get asked by the press, you're welcome to do that. You want me to stay here?
Yeah, we'll sit here.
You want me to? Thank you.